When I was born, my parents had a little tiny place on Wyoming, and it was like out in the middle of the prairie. I mean, there was nothing around except the fairgrounds because the city limits ended where the university is. Okay, my parents are Lithuanian. My father grew up in Chicago. And at that time, tuberculosis was a bad communicable disease, and lots of people had it. So when he was a very young man, the doctors told him it'll really be helpful, for the tuberculosis. So that is actually what brought him to New Mexico. For both my parents, they absolutely thought they were in heaven because they lived in New Mexico. My sister and brother are twins, and they're a year and a half younger. Gee, I was like maybe a year old when they bought the place in Alameda. So then I was just like a little tiny baby when they moved to Alameda. And that's what I remember growing up there. It was a small farm, about 5 acres. It had alfalfa, so we had animals there for sure, farm animals. They had a horse and a cow. Now, we had a horse named Trigger. Isn't that a pretty prosaic name? Anyway, Trigger used to know how to open the gate of his pen, and he would end up running away pretty frequently. And my mother would just get infuriated with this horse because, she'd have to go chase after him. The three of us, when we were little, we'd all three get on the back of the horse. And, my parents would lead the horse. But see, everybody in the neighborhood had an acre or more of land. So everybody had orchards, they had a garden, they had animals. So, and then the people that lived right across the way here, I remember they had a whole herd of goats. And it was really fun because they used them for milk. And the kids drank the goat milk, and they made all this goat cheese. It was just interesting. And when, the apples were ripe, all the children just helped themselves to whatever happened to be ripe. And we moved further into town when I was in the 4th grade, which would be 10 years old. So when I went to Alameda School, I was the only Anglo in my class. And that was interesting because a lot of times I was taller. They used to call me Cheetah because I could run faster than everybody. We'd always walk in groups together to school. Well, the canal, if you follow that, it goes like over to Aztec Road and, right over to Candelaria. Mm-hmm. And that's how we would go back and forth to go to school. So like 6 or 7 or 10 of us would get together, and we'd call it tramping. And so okay, which direction do we go today? So we just follow the canal for 1 or 2 miles and then come back again. And so I was very familiar with all the back ways all over Alameda. I was very little, but at the same time, everybody knew one another. This one time, we were heading in that direction. We were on the irrigation canal on 2nd, and somebody started shooting at us. I was like scared the tar out. We heard these gunshots. Right. And some guy yelling at us. Anyway, we never ever went back there again, ever. And we never told our parents about it. That's where I made my first communion, and so did my brother and sister. When I was older, this was when we lived in town, and I was in the choir at the time, and so we used to sing the whole liturgical year in Latin. They just don't do that anymore. It's completely different. So now you have my my story.